I was just thinking about the time that I went to France with Rita Franklin. I joined Rita Franklin band, and '69 I think, and I went to France, and I was rehearsing with the big band. I was playing baritone with Rita Franklin over there, and I was doing My Way. And as I would during the rehearsal, they had a lot of people in the audience sitting around listening to the rehearsal. So I got off the bandstand. A guy walked up to me and he said to me, he said, "Hey, you from New Orleans?" I said, "Oh no, man, I said, I'm from Detroit," because I was with Rita Franklin. He said, "No, you from New Orleans because then you're playing." I said, "Yes." I said, "My name is Charlie Gabriel." He said, "Well, do you know Manny Gabriel?" I said, "Manny Gabriel?" I said, "It's my daddy." He said, "Yeah." So I started talking with him, and I found out he was a jazz critic, and he knew he had met Cindy Bechet, and he knew all about Cindy Bechet. And Cindy Bechet was one of the first pioneers that left New Orleans back in the 20s to go to France, and he was well known in France. And he worked with my grandfather, jazz band, national jazz band. So he got to be liking me, and he took me all around Nice, France, and showed me a big statue of Cindy Bechet. So I came home, I told my dad, I said, "Hey, Dad," I said, "You know, you guys known all the way over in France." They said, "I met a guy, he asked me, did I know Manny Gabriel?" He said, "Man, you were talking about me. You talking about my daddy, because they call me Little Man." So I didn't know as much about myself as I thought I did. And I found out the man knew all about my people. So that's in '69. So I had to start talking to all my older ones that were still living, like my Aunt Cecile, my Uncle Clarence, my Aunt Alberta, my Uncle August. And I went on back and started to find out who I was and what I was. That's when I found out, I traced my family back to my great-great-grandfather, Narcisse Gabriel, from Singer Dominguez, from the Dublin Republican Island, and who he's married, and so forth and so forth. And now I'm very happy to know that I'm a part of some of the original musicians that started the rock for jazz for this university, and I'm pleased to be here and continue this tradition of jazz, and this is what I'm doing today.
When Narcisse Gabriel and his brother Joseph moved to New Orleans from the Dominican Republic in the late 1850s, they brought their families into one of the world's most cosmopolitan cities. Situated on the Gulf of Mexico at the mouth of the Mississippi River, New Orleans was a major trade center. African, French, Spanish, and American cultures mingled in a town that loved music. Congo Square kept traditional African rhythms alive. Marching bands played in the streets. String bands played European folk music. And this new sound, called the blues, had solo pianists working through the night at pleasure houses. Narcisse Gabriel instilled a family infatuation with music making that lives over a century, 6 generations later. His daughters, Mary, Alice, and Cecilia, played guitar and sang. His son, Martin Joseph Gabriel, played accordion and led bands that played in the French Quarter and at estates on Lake Pontchartrain at the turn of the century. When the brassy sounds of jazz sifted in, Martin Joseph picked up cornet and trumpet. His national orchestra was one that a few later jazz greats came through during their formative years.
I remember Adolph White. He was a trombone player, played with my daddy. A little fellow played bass we used to call butt cut. And Barberin, Adolph Barberin, which is Paul Barberin's daddy, he played along in the brass band and the jazz band with my daddy. And
some of your brothers played with your daddy?
Well, yeah, they come along later. My brother Manny, he played drums with my daddy. I don't remember if Clarence played with my daddy, but now my sister Alberta, she played piano, and she used to copy most of the music or write the music for my daddy. That was my oldest sister. Then there was old Lloyd Keppert, played with him. Johnny Sincere also. The first band that the late great Johnny Sincere ever played with my daddy started him out on guitar, and later he went from my daddy to playing with a couple of musicians around New Orleans right into the Louis Armstrong's Hot Five. He got just that good, and he was well known all over. In later years, he was out there in Disneyland, played out there in Disneyland with quite a few of the musicians from out of New Orleans.
So what kind of impression did this make on you when you were a young kid and saw your father's got a band and your brothers and sisters are playing? And I mean, obviously there's a lot of music going on.
Well, it was a lot of fun around the house. Back then, every Sunday and Saturday, and even some nights during the week, there were always a lot of people coming to the house. And my brother Clarence got on the piano. I had another cousin, Ernest. He got to zoot kazoot. Or somebody would be beating on something for the drums, and we just had a lot of fun. We'd all be around there singing and dancing, and some of the neighbors would drop in. And then when my daddy had rehearsal with the band, it was always at my house.
Playing and learning together as a family was a pattern to be repeated again.
I first started playing music, I was about 11 years old. My dad heard my cousin Clarence Ford and myself fooling around with a potato whistle. It was made like a potato. And we were blowing this potato whistle. Clarence had the potato whistle, and we were doing duets on the potato whistle. And my dad heard us playing the potato whistle on the back step. We were living on Conti Street, 2219 Conti. And he told my mother, those boys are going to play some music. So when he go to work, he was working with the WPA band. My dad with the WPA band. When he go to work, I used to, Clarence and I went inside and were fooling around with the clarinet and took the clarinet out in the backyard, and we were trying to play on it. And And he came and he caught us playing on the clarinet. And usually my dad, if he catch you playing with his horn, you automatically got a whipping. I mean, a good whipping. So instead of him whipping us, he told us, come on, let me show you something about this horn. So he started teaching Clarence and myself how to play the clarinet. We were playing the C clarinet first. Because at first he had 2 E flat, but we started playing on the C clarinet. And we would practice and practice 8-9 hours a day. And we practiced so much and made so many bad notes and things that they put us in the yard in our bird house. And then we had what you call a chicken coop. And Clarence and I was sitting in this chicken coop, and we would play, and the chicken would be on the top of us, and the chicken would sometimes would doo-doo on our paper.
And again, over the years,
I have always been very musically aware. Even as a young child, I was very attuned to music. I used to play the piano as a baby, just banging, of course, like many children do, but I had a fascination with the piano. As I became older, I knew my grandfather was very involved in music. My uncles I was aware of were very involved in music, and my own dad was a bass player and songwriter. And so my dad is Gabriel, and Dad wanted me to take piano lessons. We didn't have a piano, but I started taking piano lessons anyway at about almost 6 years old. And my grandfather had a very small white piano, which we still have in the family, at his home, and I would go over and learn how to practice on this miniature baby grand piano. Sometime later, my father bought a Wurlitzer, and I continued taking lessons for about 7 or 8 years, mostly classical music. My grandfather was one of the persons who stayed on my back about practicing. Of course, my own dad stayed on me to practice constantly, and how important it was to learn to read the music. It was very important that I knew how to read the music. Big Daddy would try to teach me some of the things from New Orleans, so he exposed me to some band music. I had no concept of band music. It was very, very difficult for me to understand how the piano played one part and the other instruments played their parts. I found it very difficult. However, as time passed, he insisted that I learned it, so I would learn gradually. Now, Uncle Charles, who was my godfather, was traveling all through the country most of my childhood. As he would come home to visit, he would keep up on my progress, and all of my uncles would surround me. They put music up, and then they watched me read the notes. And if I didn't get a note right, I knew I was in trouble, so I really made sure I was reading the music. Because if I didn't read it, they knew I wasn't reading it, and I was like having this major test. They stayed on me, and Uncle Charles had in the back of his mind that as soon as I got old enough, I'd start playing music with him.
What are some of the earliest songs you remember hearing around the house?
One, I wish I could shimmy like my sister Kate. That was one of them. Dogtown Strutter's Ball. One number I remember, I used to love to hear my daddy play, Girl of My Dreams. That was a waltz. Later they had a habit of playing, they'd take a waltz and they'd play about 2 or 3 choruses of it in a waltz tempo. Because then, if you couldn't play a waltz, you wouldn't get no jobs.
Waltzes were the main dancing music?
Yes, all these, well, that's when the men could show off their stuff with the ladies, you know, make spin around and dance on their toes. They used to have waltz contests back then. They put chalk on your heels. Now you had to dance on your toes, and if your heel touched the floor while you was doing that waltz, you was eliminated. That's the way it was. And then after they'd play a few choruses of that waltz, then they'd pick up the tempo and put it in a foxtrot. And there was another dance back then they did. Only time you'd see it at, I think I heard them mention it on television a couple of weeks ago, was the quadrille.
Oh, that's one of those French dances.
Yes. And he was one of the few bands back then that could play a quadrille.
quadrilles were probably something that people were starting to not play anymore.
At least 4 to 8 people doing that. You see them in the movies nowadays. Some of these societies, they dance around and dip under one another's arm. But one of those, they had special music for that. And there was another dance type of music you had to play. It was called the shotters.
What's that?
That's one of those old dances like the quadrille back in there. As the society of the better class of people, doctors and lawyers, well, they'd have that at their affairs. These millionaires now, the everyday people, they didn't bother with doing that. Those were all foreign dances that come from over the other countries.
Percy's brother-in-law, Auguste Lenoir, specialized in quadrilles, chants de chant, and waltzes as an activist for the preservation of Creole culture. He played in string bands and ragtime orchestras, the music which immediately predated jazz.
What's the New Orleans jazz sound that's different from other kinds of jazz?
Well, a lot of people try to compare New Orleans jazz with Dixieland. It's not. New Orleans jazz is played with the feeling. You play your main theme. You keep your melody at all times so that people know you play your solos and counterpoint to your melody. And people know what you're playing at all times, regardless of how much you jazz it up. And it's played more that everybody can feel it. It's not played too fast. And it's played with the solid beat. You cannot sit there and listen to it and don't pat your hand or pat your feet. You're going to move some kind of
how would you characterize your bass playing style?
Bass, you do a lot of 2/4, playing 2/4.
What's that?
2 beats to a measure. Most of that's your New Orleans beat. And then you could play it with a slap, or you can play it just strictly pizzicato.
Could you show us that? The 2/4 and what's a slap?
Oh
and
yes,
what's a
I can give you a little idea. So like you, okay, so like me.
Okay, that's a 2/4 beat, and were you playing that with the slap there?
With a light slap.
Okay, well, give me a heavy slap.
Here's another slap.
Okay, now do the same thing with the pizzicato then.
With the pizzicato?
Yeah.
Percy's older siblings, Martin Manuel, Clarence, Cecilia, Alberta, and her husband August, cousins Joseph and Albert Dude Gabriel, were all active in and around New Orleans. Martin Joseph worked with the likes of Kid Rene and Papa Celestin, in addition to leading his own bands. Clarence mostly worked as a solo pianist at local nickel and dime dance halls. Alberta and Cecilia played piano at various school and church functions.
So tell us how you learned how to play the bass.
The bass, as I said, my brother-in-law August, my oldest sister's husband,
August Lanois.
Lanois. He also played the violin and trombone. He played with 2 bands. He played with Herbert Leary's band regular, and then he played with my brother, had a trio. My brother Clarence worked on Fridays and Saturday nights down in the French Quarters. It was a place then they were playing at Victor's Cafe on Toulouse and Bourbon Street, right in the heart of the French Quarters, just off the corner from where the Preservation Hall is. So when the big band had a job, he went with them. Then he used to always put somebody else with my brother, Albert Glennie, who also played with my daddy. Tom Copeland was another who played bass with my daddy. So my brother-in-law was always sending one of them. Well, he also worked in the cleaning business. When he was going to be a little late, he used to tell me, okay, take my bass on up there and just play around with it while the band is playing so nobody would know. Well, I knew the strings on it. I didn't know too much of what I was doing, but somebody said it sounded good. And told me I should go into it all together. So one evening, I went over by my sister's house, and he left a note for me to go up on Upper Line Street off of Britannia. A friend of his, Joe Charles. And he said, just go up there and tell him I say give it to you. Well, I didn't know what he was talking about. I caught the streetcar. We didn't have an automobile. I caught the streetcar and went on up there. So this friend of his, Joe Charles was his name, he said, oh yeah, you come for the bass. I was a little shocked. I'm saying, no. What do August need with 2 basses? He's got a good bass. So, okay, I took the bass, had a little strap on it from coming from the peg up to the neck, threw it across my shoulder, caught the streetcar and come on down. So when August came from work that evening, he said, okay, now the bass is yours. Here's a finger chart. You'd already know the strings, but here's a chart with the fingering on it. You go over there by Clarence and tell him I say teach you this bass. You're going to be playing with him. So I went on over there, but carried the bass, had to walk with it a lot. Carried the bass on over to Clarence's house. He said, what? I said, yeah, Gus told me to come on over here for you to teach me how to play the bass. He said, come on in then. Sit down by the piano. He said, you know the strings on it? I said, yes, well, I knew that from the guitar. Your last 4 strings is the same as the bass. So all right, he started with a number like Dinah that didn't have many changes. He said, now this is an A flat. All right, you start off A flat, E flat, A flat, E flat, E flat, B flat, E flat, B flat, B flat, F, B flat, F, back to B flat, down to A. I said, oh yeah, well then I had a pretty good ear from playing the guitar, and I knew how to play those on the guitar and just transform right from the guitar to the bass. Well, the second week, August had to play with Herbert Leary's band. So, okay, you go work with Gun this week. We used to call my brother Gun. He was a little stocky built fella. We used to always say he hit like a gun shoot. So he said, you go down there and you play with Gun. So that was right down my alley then. Job, music was pretty good then, but nobody was making a lot of money. I think we was getting $1.25 a night, 3 drinks and a sandwich, and we made tips. So it was my brother Clarence. He doubled on banjo and piano. There was a little small piano there. Piano must have been about 4 octaves. And it wasn't the electrical piano, it was an acoustic piano, but it was just small. Albert Burbanks, he was one of the late, great clarinet players. So said Burbanks said, well, okay, that's your little brother, come on, we get him in here. The first 2 weeks, my brother said I sound so bad he was afraid to tell the man who was waiting for that I was his brother. Because my fingers swelled up like big biscuits and I had them wrapped with tape. And it was a punishment at first 2 or 3 weeks. So after that, I'd go every day to my brother's house and he'd teach me the music. At the same time, my brother Manny was teaching me the music. My brother-in-law August was teaching the music. Everybody had a little hand in on it.
One day when we kids were all home playing, I was about 12 years old, I took out my father's horn and I started to playing with it. And all of a sudden when I looked up, my father was in the house looking at me. I just knew he was going to give me a good spanking, you know, tear me up. Instead, he came in the house and started teaching me to play. And then when I was about 13 years old, he started taking me around to play jobs. And I played jazz when I was 13, 14, 15, and 16. When I was 16, I got married. And my husband told my father after I was married he didn't want no career woman, he wanted a wife. And that's when I stopped playing. But I played for a lot of bazaars and weddings and at the church. That's the kind of things that he didn't take me to around no bars or nothing. But he just let me play for a lot of weddings. A lot of times the people would say, Mr. Gabriel, be sure and bring the girl with you. Because he used to give me quite a bit of money, but I never seen it. He brought it home to my mother.
Indeed, there were some less successful attempts.
My father was very strict with us. We couldn't play other kids, go down the block, anything. We all had to play music. He bought me a banjo. I tried to learn it. Then he bought me another. The kids broke it. He bought me another one, and I had to play it. He tried to make me sing Sweet Sue. I could never carry a tune. I said, Sweet Sue. He hit me on my head. Hit me again and said, Sweet Sue. So I never could carry a tune. But he tried to teach me, tried very hard.
And it wasn't always all fun.
When I was a kid, when my father taught me, the first song he taught me was In My Solitude. And after I learned In My Solitude, I was about, I'd say about 11 or 12 years old. I learned a song In My Solitude. He said, well, now you're ready to go and play music now. So he took me out on a job. I said, what am I going to do after I play In My Solitude, Daddy? He said, well, I'll show you what to do. So we went on a job, and I was about 12, 11 years old, something like that. Went on a job, and I played in my solitude. And after that, he began to give me some little notes to harmonize on, you know, like boo, dude, card, and so forth and so on. And so I did this. And then after I started learning a few more songs, then he began to send us down into the French quarters to play. And so it seemed like more like it was work, because I wanted to go out and be with the little girls and be with the little boys, you know. And I didn't want to go out and take up my Sunday or my weekends to play music. And so finally I had to cry about it, you know. And so he said, well, he says, what I'll do, I'll alternate you and Martin. That's my brother Martin. He's older than I am. And he played trumpet too. So he used to let Martin and I, we used to alternate. So Martin would play one night and I would play one night.
And work they did. Whether as a leader or a sideman, there was a Gabriel out there. They played New Orleans jazz, and they played it in New Orleans. That is, until Harold Dijon hired Percy to join the band on a pleasure liner traveling to New York.
Back in 1937, when I first went to New York with Harold Dijon's band, we were playing on a steamer Dixie. That's an ocean steamer, pleasure boat from New Orleans to New York, didn't make any other stops. And they had suites on the boat. The boat was so big until during World War II, the government took it as a transport to carry soldiers all over the world. That's just how big it was. Well, we'd be in dock in New York for 6 days. And naturally, I had relatives up there, so I wouldn't stay on the boat. I stayed with the relatives, and I'd hit up in Harlem. I went into a place called the Big Apple on 135th and 7th Avenue. It was owned by Ed Smalls, who had the Great Smalls Paradise. So I went in there, and I asked him, let me sit in. So I said, have the group in there. He said, where you from? I said, I come in from college. They said, give him the bass, let him in. So played. I said, played about the first 2 or 3 numbers. He asked me, did I want a job? I says, no, I can't take a job. I said, I'm working on a boat. He said, you make up your mind to quit the boat. I got a job here. And just say you want to New York, you got a job. I made about 4 or 5 more trips. And then I decided to stay in New York. I just went there and says, I'm going to stay at this trip. He said, you want to start tonight? Just like that. I said, no, give me a couple days. So he fired his bass player and took me. So it was Bob Robinson on piano, Sammy Allen on guitar, I was on bass, and Hazel Ballard was singing with us. That's how I got to know a lot of the great musicians around New York, because we'd start playing around 10 o'clock. We'd play from about 10 at night until 4 in the morning, 4:30. And every musician who was somebody, they used to come in there and sit in. Fellas like Harry James, Roy Eldridge. I got to meet the great Stuff Smith, 80 South, great violinist, great jazz violinist, Trauma Young. Any good musician who was anybody used to come in there to sit in, because we had a terrific rhythm section. And you may know, or you probably heard, when Bob Robinson left the Big Apple, he went with this fellow who's Billy Daniels. He was his pianist. And he tried to get me to come with him, but I said, no, I got a little better deal going down to Palm Beach, Florida, with another group. At the same time, Danny Barker was trying to get me to come with Cab Calloway, because Morgan had left Cab Calloway and went with somewhere else. I think he went out to California or something, and he needed a bass player, because Cab had got him another band getting ready to go on the road. I said, nope. I already told him that I'm going down there on a regular job. We had 6 months in Florida, and I didn't want no one-nighters then. That's all the bands were doing, one-nighters. And staying in one place for 6 months, you could accumulate more than staying in a different motel every night.
He traveled to Florida with Jack Sneed, Joe Guy, and George Mordat. They did well working the resort scene and had more than a few adventures.
So we walking slow along Main Street, looking in the show windows, window shopping. Here it is, 3:30 in the morning, we window shopping. Well, then we wore white Palm Beach suits, white shoes, white shirt, and a red bow tie with a red boot in there. We was really clean. Here comes a policeman riding on a bicycle. We call him a dough shaker. They said, "Where you boys going?" I said, "We're going home." "Where you coming from?" "We're coming from work." "You got your pass?" "What pass?" "I know nothing about a pass." He said, "Well, I'll tell you, keep right straight on this street until you get to Rosemary. And when you turn Rosemary, just before you get to the railroad track, you'll see the police station. You go in there and I'll meet you there." I said, okay. We went on, walked in the police station, and he walked in just right alongside of us, sitting behind well, we called him the desk sergeant, was behind the counter. He was talking about a redneck. You hear rednecks, but you haven't seen a redneck until you've seen him. He weighed about 250, 260 pounds, and he was red as a beet. And he leaned over this counter and it says, "What you niggas did?" And the policeman said, "They ain't did nothing. They was walking home from work." "Didn't you see that pass?" "No, they didn't have no pass." So he called all four of us up in front, well, they call it the desk, but it's nothing but a counter to me. He said, "Where you boys from?" I said, "We're from New York." He said, "I know you're all a book from New York. We know more about you than you know yourself. But you come in here." I said, "Well, you know we got rules. This ain't New York. We got rules here. No niggers allowed in the white section after dark. No white allowed in the nigger section after dark. Now you see that railroad track there? That's the dividing line. Now if you got to walk from work, you be sure and get a pass from your boss." So, okay. We waited about a week or two later. We're going to try that, see what it's all about. So we went to the boss. "Mr. White, give us a pass. We're walking home tonight." Okay, he got one of them little pieces of slip off one of the girls where she write up the orders. "These are my noisemakers. Let them through." He didn't have nobody's name on it, not even his own name on it. Police picked up, county police picked us up again. "Okay, I'll ride you over the bridge. You got your pass?" "Yep." Walking, the same dough shaker came along there, as we called him, on a bicycle. "Where you boys going?" "We're going home." "Where you coming from?" "We're coming from work." "You got a pass?" "Yeah." Now he's out in the street on the bike, and we on the sidewalk. We hold up that little slip of paper, which was about a 3x5. "Yep, go ahead through." He didn't even look at it. Didn't even look at it to see if anything was wrong. We could have had a piece of toilet paper and did the same identical thing, and he wouldn't have known the difference.
While the road took him through Florida and on to Georgia, back home, his brothers kept things going.
I remember one time during the Mardi Gras time, Daddy used to rehearsal every Sunday, all the different hymns, for he had different students he would teach. He would teach the guys at the blind school. He taught a couple of blind guys how to play music, saxophone, clarinet. And he would have different students come to the house on Sundays, and we would rehearse all the music during the week. So when Sunday come, we all would sit down and play these hymns with this student. And Martin would play the trumpet, August would play the trumpet, Clarence would play the alto, I would play the tenor, my dad would play the alto, And sometime, my Uncle August Lenoir will come over. They lived across the street in Maine, Alberta. He'll come over sometime and play the bass. And we play these hymns. Sometime my Uncle Clarence will come over and he'll play the piano, and we be still playing these different hymns. This will go on every Sunday at my home in New Orleans. So during the Mardi Gras time, there was no musicians available to play the job. My daddy decided he got the job to play for one of the big Zulu, not the Zulu, it must have been the I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, one of them big organizations that has a big band all the time during the Mardi Gras festival. So he decided he would take and rehearse all of us on some of the heaviest marches that the other band would not be playing. And so we got a young boy played trombone, I can't remember his name, and my brother August, my brother Martin, my brother Leonard, myself, and my daddy. And he brought these heavy marches like Gloria. Gloria was a type of march that the trumpet player had a very, very hard part to play, and the clarinet had his part to play. My brother August and my brother Martin, and we would play this Glory, and they used to go and that was one of them heavy, heavy marches that Daddy wanted us to learn. But it was so, we would practice every day before Mardi Gras. And so when and then we had my brother Leonard. He was the one that he could hit all the high notes. So when we start playing music like Lady Be Good and Who Threw the Whiskey in the Well, or one of them two, Down by the Riverside, all them type of tunes we would play. And my daddy would know that when he want them high notes to be played, Leonard would hit them high notes. August and Martin be playing like Hunter Sunk Roll. And we get to them high note, and then hit them high notes for them, and Martin and August would play the duets. So that went on. So when we got out on this particular Mardi Gras day, all the bands were playing. So the guy was saying, here come Lenny down there with all them kids. What they gonna play? They was all wondering what the kids gonna play. So Daddy went over and he told us, he said, come on boys, now it's time for you all to show off. So we're gonna play Gloria. And man, Daddy had the drum boom, 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 and kicked that Gloria off. And we went to, they thought of playing that Glory. And the clarinet, I had my clarinet part, and we had to play all the more clarinet runs and things. And all the musicians came around. They were so astonished to hear all those young kids playing so well.
Eventually, when Percy did come home, he found a place with Herbert Leary's Society Syncopators. Leary used two bassists in the then-current Duke Ellington style. Percy also led his own band at a new club, the Moulin Rouge.
I happened to look in the paper, the Times-Picayune paper, and I saw this nightclub wanted a band. It must have been about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I went out to Fred's quarters and said, let me look in this place and see what it's like. I walk in there, and I say, I see you advertising for a band. He said, you got a band? I says, yes, which I didn't have a band. He said, well, get your band together and bring them out here. I want to hear them. I said, we'll be out here tomorrow night. He said, no, bring them out here tonight. So I got to thinking, now who am I going to get on this late notice? So I said, well, I know I could get my brother, Clarence, one on the piano. And I thought about Manuel Crusto on trumpet. He's playing now with the Preservation Hall. You may have seen him on commercials. He used to do a commercial for Riceland Rice. played his clarinet at the preservation of him. And the friend, he said, well, we could get Jack Lamont on a saxophone. I said, well, the man want us right away. I told him I got 4 pieces. Good, I got Irene's car. And I went and picked them all up. And we went on out there. So we played. I said, well, we play about 3 or 4 numbers, let the man hear what we can do and get out of here. So we played 3 numbers and was packing up. The man ran up back and said, where you going? I said, we're going. We just played enough. He said, you got the job. I looked and said, well, let's sit down and talk money. So he said, play, we talk money after you get off. He didn't have no show. I think that night he must have had about, maybe 8 or 10 people came in the club. So we talked. He says, now I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He said, I'm going to get a show in here. I says, a show. I said, what you going to do, go to the palace and get a show? Nope. He's come back here tomorrow. When you come here tomorrow night, I'll have a show. He went over in Mississippi, and he got 4 girls from over off a carnival that was held up in Mississippi. Kathleen, Kathleen. Oh, it was 4. I can't remember all the names. I'd have to look through some of my books. Oh, Penny was one of them. That's 3 of them. So anyway, they brought those girls in, and I talked with them. I said, well, what you going to do? He said, first thing they say, all we know how to do is walk across the stage and take off our clothes. That's all they were used to doing. So I asked them what type of music they wanted. They said, well, you always play something sort of weird, you know, a lot of tom-toms in it. So I had a big tom-tom. I used to double on a tom-tom with the show on some number when they do their bumps and grind. Here, after that night, they did all right. We had a balk out there, and we got quite a few people in. So man said, now I want you all to have a rehearsal tomorrow during the day. Well, I got the fellas, we come now for the rehearsal. We sit down and say, now you in here, we got one rule in this place. What you do in here, you're right. Anybody else not affiliated with this place is wrong. I don't care what you do. Say, now I'm going to get a bunch of B-girls. A B-girl is girls sit around, they hustling drinks, and they get, okay, then they were charging $1.10 for a drink, for regular whiskey and water, or whiskey and Coke. The 10 cents was for the waiter, 50 cents for the girl, 50 cents for the house. That's the way those B-girls went.
When he did hit the road again, working with Don Redmond, Danny Barker, and Jay McShann, things changed back home. Brother Martin moved to Detroit with his family. Little Charles, who had already become popular in New Orleans, was one of the last to arrive.
I left New Orleans and I came to Detroit. It's 1948. I came to Detroit in 48. I think it was 48 or 47, one of the two. And I got involved with a lot of musicians here. But the most funny thing I can remember was my brother Leonard. Leonard, my brother Arthur was always telling me how to play the different things from Lester Young, because I loved the Lester Young, and that was my thing. I like to play that type of music. And but I was playing Illinois Jacket. I liked Illinois Jacket. Illinois Jacket was making all the money, so Arthur would come and tell me, come on, baby, sit down and ooh in the horn and ooh in the horn. And then sometimes he used to take the horn and play on the horn himself, Ghost of a Chant, do 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 do, and growling the horn on for me. He played a little saxophone too, August. But I was hooked up on Illinois Jacket. So I was practicing one day, and then it came in there, and he said, hey boy, so what you doing? So you want to play with Lionel Hampton? I said, yeah, but Hampton was working at the Paradise Theater. And he wasn't at the Paradise Theater, and So it was Fat Novell in the band and all this cat, but I wasn't too much aware of what was going on then. So he said, look, get your horn, I'm gonna take you down, let you play with Lonnie Hampton. So what happened, he left and we went on to the Paradise Theater. So we got down to the Paradise Theater, Leonard knocked on the door, pop, 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 pop. And man peeped out there and looked and said, who is it? Leonard said, where's Lonnie Hampton? Hey, where's him? Where's him? The man said, who are you? He said, Leonard said, I got the greatest saxophone player in the world out here. Now, I got my horn in my hand like that, you know. What you telling the man like that? Leonard got the greatest saxophone player in the world. He said, tell him I got the greatest saxophone player in the world out here. So the cat went back and told him, he said, they got a guy knocking on the door outside. So he got the greatest saxophone player in the world. So he came and said, open it up. So he opened the door and let me come on in. So I came on in behind the stage. And him looked at me and said, you play that? I said, yeah, I play that. He said, take it out. I took my horn on out. So he went to the piano. Lonnie Hampton went to the piano and he played blow. So I thought the blowing teeth for two. I know all them songs from New Orleans. My dad had taught me all them songs. And Hampton thought playing the piano with the one finger. And I thought they're playing teeth for two. I kept on playing. He thought they're playing. We thought they're jamming. Me and Lonnie Hampton. So he said, you will play my band? I said, yeah. Well, I was already up on top of playing like Illinois Jacket, you know. So when later on, when we went back to the stage, he called me out to start playing Flying Home. And I was about 16 years old, I guess. I jumped in front of the band, and I knew how to play the horn upside down behind my back, and I thought the playing like Illinois Jacket. And by me being such a youngster, the house really got a big kick out of that. So anyway, I got involved with Hampton, and Hampton started the Junior Bebop band with Lou Claire Rockamo, Clarence Beasley, Pepper Adam, Bob Pearson, and myself, and I can't remember someone else. However, we started Lonnie Hampton Junior Bebop band here in Detroit, but that didn't last too long.
Hampton was but a beginning for Charlie. He got into a Latin kick during the mambo craze and traveled with his own trio. He was band leader for Joe Simon and worked with Aretha Franklin and J.C. Hurd. Lately, he travels the world as a member of the original Camellia Jazz Band. While he did this, his father, Martin Manuel, and Uncle Percy were not gathering cobwebs.
I got a four-piece group together. Was playing weekends at small clubs around Detroit, River Rouge, East Coast, Jackson, Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, playing that. Did a lot of work with these name acts used to come through like Four Tops, Dinah Washington, all. I played along with them. They had dances and they were in there, so they had to have somebody to play the dance music for them. Then one Sunday, a fellow I knew from out of Louis Russell's band, that's the band that, big band that Armstrong used on the road quite a bit. We call him Deacon Jones. He said, Joe Norris told me that you was here and I should talk with you. He says, now I want to go back into music. He had also had an ulcer head operation. So he said, but I got to have somebody who know how to play New Orleans jazz and Dixieland. So I said, well, who you got working with? He said, nobody, just you right now. So I said, well, we get us a little four-piece group together until you get your stomach back. You can blow like you want. And then we'll work from there. So after he got, that he could blow his horn like he used to, I got my brother Manny on clarinet, fellow we call Sax Carey on piano, Ted Merriweather on trombone, Reetha Mallett on drums, myself and Jimmy made up 6 pieces. And I went down to St. Leo's church and talked with the priest there, because that was my church. He said, yeah, you could use the basement to rehearse. So we rehearsed one night, And the next week, he says, I got a fellow wants to hear the band. So he had the manager of a hotel over in Toledo to come over and listen to us. And he hired us right on the spot for 2 weeks. We stayed in there 76 weeks.
Couple of years.
That's right. And during that time, the band went to New York World's Fair and all. So finally, Jimmy got too sick to play. When he got too sick to play, as I was the one who got the band together, I took the band back over. Under my name, I got Charles Victor Moore to play. And on piano, I got Jay Golson. And I kept the rest of the fellows, as there's my brother Manny, Ditto, Merriweather, and Drums Mallet. And it stayed like that until Drums Mallet died. Then I got Babe Borders to play. Later on, Babe Borders got sick on drums, so I got Bobby Neal, who is still with me. And my brother died, and I got Ditto on clarinet. So the band actually have been operating since back in the 60s. Early 60s, and here we are in the 80s, and still some of the same men playing right together.
It's almost 90s.
Well, the fellas are all well seasoned, they're up in age. Charles Victor Moore is formerly out of the McKinney Cotton Pickers. He's been playing trumpet since he was 10 years old. And now he is 81 and can still play. Ted Merriweather, he's 81 and he's still playing. Ditto is 76 on clarinet. Bobby Neal, he's 67. John Alexander, he's about 68. I'm still kicking around here. I'll be 74 my next birthday. So everything's been going along beautiful with us.
The older generation kept the traditional sound going. A younger generation takes the music in a different direction. For Gabriel women, church music has been the main outlet. Marjorie has taken that vocation and made it into an avocation. A church organist, she has brought gospel into the Catholic liturgy.
It was unheard of in the Catholic Church. Well, being a young person and rather enthusiastic, I thought it'd be nice to do something a little livelier at Mass. One Sunday I tried Oh Happy Day, about 1971. I thought the old ladies were going to kill me. Some of them said if they wanted to hear that kind of music, they would have stayed where they were in the Baptist church. And they were very furious that I would bring that kind of music into the Catholic Church. And so it wasn't easy bringing in anything lively, especially with an older congregation. We had a lot of seniors. Oh, they just did not gravitate to it. And so I reverted back to some gospel music, but something that wasn't quite as lively, like Give Me a Clean Heart and some of the hymns that were soulful, but I had to trick them, make them think it wasn't soulful. I didn't call it gospel, and so it was okay.
Aside from bringing the gospel influence more into the Catholic Church, you've also been involved with bringing jazz into the liturgy too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This is true. I call the masses that I use horns and drums and bass are jazz masses. When my uncle traveled, he traveled all over the country, all over the world, and he came back, and he still wanted me to play with him, my Uncle Charles. He still wanted me to play music with him, and but he never asked me. And one day, we were having a get-together, and I said, "Did you ever play in the church before?" And he had played in the church when they were children. He and my cousin Clarence Ford had played. They learned, their first song was Savior Lead Me Lest I Stray was the first song that they learned. My grandfather taught them. They really hadn't played in the church. And so I gave him that idea, and he didn't know why he hadn't played in the church, so he started playing with me. He would come over and play with me for masses, donated services, for church services, and something happened to him for playing at the church. He told me that he never realized that there was so much alike, the church music and the jazz that he was playing. And so now we have these services where we have horn parts, we have our own contemporary bass player, we've got a drummer, we've got sometimes tambourines and other percussion instruments, and we do a lot of jazz.
And so the generations of musicians carry on. Back in New Orleans, cousin Clarence Ford maintains the standard, as do his sons Thaddeus and Louis. Keeping it going is what it's all about.
I played with Willie Humphrey's daddy, and this guy, I was playing with this guy, he told me, he said, "You know one thing, son?" He said, "I'm glad to play with you." So I'm going to play with you. I said, "Why is that?" He says, "Because I played with your dad." He said, "I played with your grandfather." And this man was very old. He played with my grandfather, he played with my dad. He said, "I played with 3 generations, and I'm playing with you." So I was honored for me to play with him.